humble homes. This is a city of stillness, a city of endurance, and tonight, you will witness its quiet heartbeat. In T-Story, you will walk along frozen streets, past wooden homes, market squares, and churches where candlelight flickers gently, and snow softens every step. You will observe life within peasant cottages, merchant homes, and even along the city walls, feeling the warmth of stoves, the glow of hearths, and the patience of those who have learned to long, cold nights. You will see the frozen Moskva river stretching silently, and the dark forests beyond, where distant wolf calls echo across the snow-laden land. As we guide you through each chapter of the night, we will not rush. Instead, let your mind wander through the stillness. Let the images of timber, frost, and candlelight fill your imagination, and allow the calm of medieval Moscow to wrap around you. Before we begin, a gentle reminder to our viewers. If you find comfort in our stories, please consider subscribing to our channel for more peaceful journeys through history. Like, share, and comment. If you feel inspired, it helps us continue to bring these quiet tales to life. And after the spoken story concludes, we will leave an hour of relaxing, soothing music playing softly, perfect for drifting into sleep, studying, or simply letting your mind rest in peace. Let the music carry you gently into the calm of your own winter night. Now, settle comfortably, breathe slowly, and allow the hush of medieval Moscow to envelop you. Tonight, we step together into a still winter night in medieval Moscow. This intro is immersive, sits smooth, and aligns perfectly with your go-to-sleep historian style. If you like, I can now create a matching detailed outro, which will smoothly close the story and transition into the relaxing music. The night had settled over medieval Moscow like a great, silent cloak, heavy, unmoving, woven from snow, frost, and a quiet so deep it touched the soul itself. Above the city, the moon drifted low and pale, its light softened by a thin veil of clouds. What little glow reached the earth scattered across rooftops, ramparts, and chimneys, and to Lolov Moscow seemed dusted in a soft, silver shimmer. It was a winter stillness so complete that even time appeared reluctant to move. From a distance, Moscow stood as a cluster of shadows and faint lights, a kind of sight that would greet a weary traveler approaching along a snowbound road. Wooden homes nestled close together, their roofs steep to shed the winter drifts. Thin strands of smoke spiraled gently into the sky, rising from hearths that worked tirelessly through long, unforgiving nights. The city seemed alive with warmth on the inside, though from afar it appeared only as a sleeping creature curled beneath winter's weight. The frozen skyline possessed a stark beauty. The old wooden Kremlin, still centuries away from the stone majesty it would one day become, rose at the city's heart. Its towers simple, sturdy, and darkened by time pierced the frosty air. Snow clung to the angled edges of its roofs, settling where the wind had grown tired. The palisade around it, formed from tall, sharpened logs bound tightly together, cast long, quiet shadows. Each log, stiffened with ice, seemed to hum softly when touched by wind, producing a sound like distant strings plucked in slow, thoughtful rhythm. Beyond the Kremlin, clusters of merchant homes rested shoulder to shoulder, their timbers creaking as the cold pressed against them. Many had shutters drawn tight, their windows covered with oiled parchment that glowed faintly when firelight flickered inside. The market district lay dark, but even there, a stray lantern might burn low, a merchant keeping careful watch over valuable goods, or a restless soul tending to a stubborn winter cough. Yet, such small lights did not break the night. They only joined it, adding to the tapestry of dim warmth woven through snow and silence. The winter sky hung close, leaving only a modest stretch of stars. They glittered faintly, as if reluctant to intrude upon the quiet below. A single breeze carried tiny flakes down in a slow, drifting dance. They touched rooftops without a sound. They caught in the fur-lined hats of night watchmen. They settled on the curved wooden eaves of homes built with patient hands. Each snowflake felt gentle, tame like a whisper reminding the city to embrace stillness. In the far quarters of Moscow, the Moskva River lay frozen in a long, unbroken ribbon of white. The moonlight brushed its surface until it gleamed like polished bone. The river, resting beneath its icy shell, offered no voice, not the rush of water, Not the crackle of frost, not the groan of shifting ice. It was calm, entirely subdued, as if winter itself had commanded it to sleep. Fishermen's huts stood quiet nearby, their tools stacked, their little boats pulled ashore until warmer times returned. From the edges of the forest, beyond the city, faint shadows lingered, trees standing bare and brittle, their branches reaching skyward like ancient hands frozen in supplication. The woodland offered a soft rumble now and then, a fox stirring, an owl shifting unseen, or the distant sigh of wind weaving its way through pines. Though these sounds were modest, they only served to deepen the sense of peace. Moskva, in its winter stillness, was not cut off from the world around it. Rather, it existed in harmony with the quiet expanse. Closer to the Kremlin walls, the narrow streets lay empty. Snow muffled every corner, smoothing paths, softening footprints, covering old wooden planks, and filling the small ruts made by carts earlier that day. No cries of traders, no wheels rolling, no horses clattering, just the hush of falling snow and the creak of roofs settling under its weight. Lantern posts stood motionless, their flames dulled by the thick, frost-tinted glass protecting them. The glow they cast was modest, enough for a night watchman to follow a path, but not so bright that the night lost its calm. Every sound was softened, every shape muted. Even the city's smell had changed, gone with a sense of livestock and market goods. In their place drifted the aroma of burning pine, warm bread baking slowly in hearth ovens, and the faint temps of cold iron from tools left outdoors. It was a scent that belonged only to winter, clean, crisp, and simple. As the night deepened, the weight of snow increased. It collected upon the beams of the Kremlin towers, settling into soft, rounded mounds. It dusted the sides of homes, clinging to rough wooden walls. It drifted over fences, forming gentle curves. Sometimes a patch of snow would slip free from a slanted roof with a muffled sigh, falling into a growing pile below. Yet even this sound did not break the peace. Instead, it became part of the rhythm, a quiet reminder that the city lived beneath the frost. The skyline held stories of past sieges, of long winters endured, of families that had warmed themselves behind thick wooden walls, of craftsmen shaping tools and icons by candlelight, of hunters returning from the forests with furs to trade. Each tower, each wall, each home held memory, and winter, being a slow and patient season, allowed these memories to rest without hurry. As snow continued drifting down, Moskva seemed suspended between earth and sky, caught in a dreamlike stillness. If one stood upon a high rampart and gazed outward, the whole city would appear like a sleeping village of light and shadow, protected by winter's embrace. Nothing hurried, nothing rushed. All was balanced, calm, and enduring. It was in this deep, timeless hush that the true character of medieval Moscow revealed itself. Not in the bustle of markets or the clang of tools, but here, beneath winter's quiet hand. For the city, even in sleep, held dignity. Even in cold, it held warmth, and even in silence, it held life. This frozen skyline, draped in moonlit snow and resting beneath the vast northern sky, marked the beginning of the night's slow, gentle journey, a journey through Moskva's hut, where the old wooden fortress, the humble homes, the quiet streets, and the frozen river all waited patiently to be seen. The wooden Kremlin of medieval Moscow rose from the snowy earth like a guardian shaped by patient hands in ancient winters. Before stone, before gilded domes and mighty towers, there had been this, a fortress of timber, resin-scented and time-worn, built by craftsmen who knew the language of wood more intimately than their own sleep. As the night deepened, the structure stood solemn and proud, its silhouette softened by fresh snow, its timbers creaking faintly beneath the weight of frost. Approaching the Kremlin at night was like stepping onto sacred ground. The outer palisade stretched wide toll logs sharpened at the top, bound together with wooden pegs and fortified mud that had long since hardened into the seams. Each log bore marks of axe and adze, the tools of men who had labored through summers past. Snow gathered between the ridges, filling grooves and softening edges until the walls seemed made not of timber, but of pale, frozen earth. A narrow gate, framed by a simple arch of heavy beams, stood slightly ajar. A lantern hung from a post nearby, swaying gently in the cold air and casting a muted glow across the packed snow below. Its flame flickered as though whispering secrets to the night. The gate's hinges were thick iron, darkened by age and wear. When they moved, they gave a low groan, harsh, not warning, but tired, like an old man rising from a long rest. Beside the gate stood two watchmen wrapped in heavy, fur-lined coats. Their boots were crusted with snow, their beards frosted white, and their breath drifted in soft clouds with every exhale. A small fire burned in a clay brazier between them, its flame weak but determined. Red embers glowed beneath the ash, sending up thin ribbons of heat that vanished into the frigid night. The watchman spoke little. In the dead of winter, words were saved, breath guarded. A nod, a quiet grunt, or the lift of a lantern often sufficed. Between them, a wooden staff rested against the gate decorated with carved lines marking years of service. Such carved staffs were common among the Kremlin's defenders, bearing not names but symbols. Trees for birthplaces, stars for battles survived, circles for harsh winters endured. Each mark was a memory. Each memory a quiet oath. Stepping through the gate into the Kremlin proper felt like entering the very heart of early Moscow. The air grew stiller, the snow deeper, the silence thicker. Buildings clustered together inside the enclosure, their rooftops sloping sharply to shed winter's burden. The structures were humble but sturdy, a granary with thick walls to keep harvests safe. A blacksmith's shed dark and cold until dawn, a storehouse of tools, arranged neatly beneath. Animal hides, and a small wooden chapel whose single candle glowed faintly through its oiled parchment window. The snow-covered ground bore the faint tracks of those who had passed earlier, the watchman's boots. A stray cat that had slipped beneath a fence, the imprint of a sled drawn by a weary horse at twilight. Now, in the depth of night, the tracks were softening as new snow fell in slow spirals, erasing the day's pattern and preparing the earth for morning. Near the center of the Kremlin's courtyard stood a large structure, the chief hall, built with logs thicker than a man's waist. The door was adorned with simple carvings of birds, trees, and swirling lines representing the flow of time. Such carvings were charms as much as decoration, believed to guard the hall from spirits that wandered winter nights. The roof rose sharply, covered in overlapping wooden shingles that had darkened with age and smoke. Snow rested gently upon them, almost glowing under the moon's pale touch. Inside the hall, a faint glow flickered beneath the door's lower edge. The chief of the guard likely remained awake, reviewing reports, rationing supplies, or planning adjustments to the night watch. Although Moscow slept, winter demanded constant vigilance. Firewood needed counting, food stores required checking, walls needed monitoring for signs of frostbite or shifting supports. Winter, like any adversary, attacked slowly but relentlessly. Around the hall, smaller buildings formed a protective ring. One housed tools for repairing the palisade wooden mallets, chisels, spare logs, and tar for sealing cracks. Another served as quarters for the younger guards who took turns resting between patrols. Their snores would have mingled with the crackle of fire if the night were quiet enough, but the wind carried those sounds away. A well stood nearby, its bucket frozen. Half-raised, ice crystals formed delicate lace along the rope, each thread sparkling in the lantern glow. Water drawn from this well had quenched many warriors' thirsts, filled cooking pots in times of plenty, and provided a small luxury warm washing water when heated on the main hall's hearth. In winter, the well was both a necessity and a test of endurance, for its icy grip challenged even the strongest arms. The inner courtyard stretched wide enough for drilling troops when weather permitted. Tonight it was empty, save for two watchmen crossing slowly from one post to another. Their footsteps crunched softly, muffled by new snow. Each carried a wooden shield slung across the back and a spear tipped with a modest iron point. The spears were not polished. They were tools, not ornaments. Their weight, their balanced ease mattered more than appearance. Above the Kremlin's walls, wooden towers rose like silent sentinels. Their roofs were steep and narrow, allowing snow to slide down rather than settle dangerously. At the top of each tower, slatted openings offered a view of the land beyond the fortress. From such a height, the watchman could see the frozen river, the dark forest, and the scattered glimmers of homes throughout the city. Tonight, lanterns in a few distant windows still burned, but most had dimmed into a faint, comforting glow. Entering one of the towers required climbing a narrow wooden stair. Each step had been worn by countless boots, the center of each plank slightly hollowed by time. As one climbed, the sound of wind intensified. It slipped through cracks and crevices, singing a low, trembling note that mingled with the occasional creak of the tower's frame. Yet the watchmen were used to these sounds. They did not fear them. They understood them. A tower spoke its own language, telling them when the wind shifted, when ice thickened, when snow piled too heavily on the rafters. At the top, the view was breathtaking. The city stretched quietly beneath the moon. Every roof wore a blanket of white. Every street was smoothed into pale pathways. The wooden skyline curved gently toward the river, and the forest beyond stood like a slumbering giant beneath the snow. Smoke drifted in thin lines across the sky, each one a mark of life, warmth, and family. In these plays, the wooden Kremlin was more than a fortress. It was a heart beating slowly in winter's calm, protecting the people who dreamed softly in the homes beyond its walls. Its timbers whispered with history, its fires glowed with duty, and its guardians, patient and unwavering, stood as the silent keepers of Moscow's peaceful night. The walls of the wooden Kremlin stretched outward like the arms of an ancient guardian, embracing the city it vowed to protect. On winter nights such as this, still, pale, and heavy with snow, the night watch moved along those ramparts with measured steps, their presence as much a part of the fortress as the logs themselves. The watchmen were the unsleeping eyes of Moscow, keeping their silent vigil while the rest of the city curled into warmth. The ramparts were packed, snow laid over sturdy wooden planks, creating a narrow path that circled the inner fortress. Lanterns hung at long intervals, their light subdued behind frost-clouded glass. Each flame flickered with a tired glow, casting trembling halos across the white surface beneath. Shadows stretched long and thin, rising and falling as the lanterns gently swayed in the night wind. Here, the winter air pressed, sharper than in the courtyard below. Cold moved openly along the walls, drifting from the frozen river and the distant forest. It curled around the towers, slid down the crenellations, and settled along the path where guards walked their rounds. Even wrapped in furlined cloaks, the watchmen felt the bite of the night with every breath. Their eyelashes glistened with frost, their beards stiffened into icy fringes. But they walked on, unhurried, steady. At this hour, most of the watch was divided into pairzan, old custom carried forward for both safety and companionship. The older guards, seasoned by years of winters, led the younger ones with quiet dignity. The younger watchmen followed with lanterns in hand, spears held upright, boots sinking slightly into the snow-packed wood. The creak of timber was a constant companion. The walls expanded and contracted in the cold, each groan sounding almost alive. A watchman could learn the mood of the fortress by its sounds. A long, slow creak meant wood adjusting to frost. A quick snap warned of tightening cold. A deep rumble, a night of snow, was shifting overhead. The walls spoke, and the watchmen listened. From the ramparts, Moscow appeared hushed and ethereal, its shapes softened into gentle contours, its lights dimmed, its movement nearly stilled. The homes closest to the Kremlin looked like small glowing pockets in the dark, their chimneys releasing thin ribbons of smoke that drifted sideways before rising toward the star-pale clouds. Each plume marked a family gathered close to their hearth, a sight that eased the loneliness of the watch. As the pair of guards moved along the northern stretch of the wall, the older watchman paused beside a tower. He lifted his lantern toward the forest beyond the city. The trees stood motionless, their bare arms silvered by moonlight. From within, a faint sound, soft, distant, and uncertain. Perhaps the cry of an owl or the shifting of branches under snow. The younger guard tensed slightly, instinct urging caution, but the elder only listened, then nodded. "The forest breathes," the older guard murmured. "Nothing more." The watchmen were trained to see all possibilities. Continuing their patrol, they walked past the arrow slits cut into the towers, narrow openings framed by hardened resin-coated wood. Through these slits, the guards could see far into the distance. The world looked like a painting, the frozen river gleaming faintly, the snow-covered roofs shimmering, and the dark mass of the forest pressing gently against the horizon. A pair of guards stationed in a tower greeted the patrolling watchmen with slow nods. Inside the tower, a small fire glowed in a stone-lined pit, giving off just enough heat to keep numbness from setting into fingers. Spears rested against the wall, shields hung carefully on pegs, and a leather bag of extra oil for the lanterns sat ready. The tower smelled faintly of smoke, pine resin, and wool. The patrolling watchmen paused briefly to warm their hands. The older one rubbed his palms near the faint heat and looked out through the slats toward the snowy town. He could see individual homes, the market square, and the distant wooden bridge that crossed the river. All seemed at peace. When the city sleeps, he said quietly, the walls must stay awake. Here, the roofs formed a gentle slope toward the river. Lanterns glowed like faint amber stars trapped beneath snow. The sound of the city's life was mute, distant dogs shifting in their sleep, a shutter tapping softly, or the low hum of a stove's draft. Winter softened everything. A gust of wind swept across the ramparts, scattering fine snow that sparkled in the lantern light. The watchmen pulled their cloaks closer. Their boots struck the wooden planks with a slow rhythm that matched the fortress's breathing. The walls seemed to move with them, settling, adjusting, creaking gently under winter's weight. As the pair reached the western tower, the moon dipped lower, casting its last clear light across the city. The elder paused one final time, leaning against the crenellate. His gaze traveled from one quiet district to another, then to the frozen plains beyond. He listened not for danger, but for the assurance that all remained calm. And indeed, everything was. The night, the walls, the city, the snow wall rested in perfect stillness. The watchmen moved on, lantern light flickering against the wooden beams. Their steady patrol was the heartbeat of the sleeping city. They kept watch not only with eyes, but with quiet devotion, guarding Moscow through the long winter hours until dawn would return to lift the frost from the rooftops. The market square of medieval Moscow, so lively by day, so loud with barter and boots, laughter and quarrels, lay now in a hush so complete it seemed almost enchanted. Snow drifted down in soft spirals, falling upon empty stalls, shuttered booths, and the wooden frames of carts left waiting for morning. A place that had pulsed with life only hours before now appeared frozen in time, resting beneath winter's quiet hand. At the square's eastern edge, the largest stalls stood in ordered rows, their roofs blanketed in thick snow. Cambasonings had been tightly rolled and tied earlier in the evening, their edges stiff with frost. The ropes that bound them creaked softly whenever the wind brushed past small, faint sounds, swallowed quickly by the winter night. Beneath those awnings, tables stood bare, save for a few forgotten baskets or the faint scent of goods long since stored away for the season. By day, merchants filled this place with noise. Fishmongers shouting prices, fur traders boasting of their finest pelts, farmers arguing over the weight of grain. Yet now, no voice rose from the darkness. No footsteps hurried across the planks. No horse snorted impatiently beside a cart. Instead, the market breathed a calm so deep it felt ancient. The snow had transformed everything. It softened the edges of the wooden booths, rounded the corners of crates, and muted the hard lines of stone markers that marked trading posts. Even the central well, normally a gathering spot where women fetched water and exchanged stories, tattooed quiet, its heavy bucket frozen halfway down, the rope hardened with ice. A thin crust of frost framed the well's circular mouth, catching moonlight like a ring of dull silver. A few lanterns still burned at distant corners, left intentionally for the safety of the night watch. Their flames were faint, dimmed behind layers of frost. Light seeped out in gentle halos, illuminating small patches of snow and revealing crisscrossing footprints left earlier. Already, the fresh snowfall had begun to soften the tracks, smoothing them until only hints remained. By dawn, the square would appear untouched, as though no person had passed through in weeks. At the northern edge, additional stalls crowded closer together in tighter clusters. These were the smaller merchants, the peddlers of winter herbs, dried mushrooms, handmade tools, and small wooden toys. Their tables were narrow, their wares modest, but their presence gave character to the square. Even now, faint scents lingered in the air. Dried mint, pine resin, smoked fish, and the earthy traces of mushrooms stored in woven baskets. These scents blended with the winter air in a way that spoke quietly of livelihoods resting, not gone. One stall, decorated with thin carved panels depicting winter birds, had left behind a few items: bundles of birch kindling tied with twine and a small clay jar sealed with wax. Snow had gathered on them, forming a soft white cap. The merchant who owned the stall was known for his early mornings, but tonight he slept deeply in his home across the river, trusting the quiet night and the watchful walls to guard his simple goods. Near the center of the square stood a large wooden cart with its wheels partially buried in snow. Turing Sumeri transported fresh vegetables from nearby villages. Tonight, its frame creaked faintly under the cold, as if whispering memories of warmer seasons. A tarp, stretched tightly across the top, glistened with frost. Snow outlined its edges in a delicate lacework, shimmering softly under the moon. Around the cot, the emptiness felt peaceful rather than lonely. The square, stripped of its bustle, exhaled. It had worked hard through the months feeding the city, bargaining, carrying laughter and conflict alike across its wooden boards. Now it rested, calm and undisturbed. The market square was more than a place of exchange. It was a meeting ground for news from afar. During daylight, merchants from different corners of the land brought stories. Travelers from Novgorod, speaking of distant trade caravans, hunters describing wolves in the winter woods, or traders whispering news from the southern roads. Tonight, those stories slept, resting in the memories of the people who carried them. As snow continued to fall, the square's soundscape became even gentler. Now and then, a wooden beam cold, and Strain gave a faint sigh. A shutter tapped lightly against its frame. A lattice window rattled as wind passed briefly by. These were not disturbances. They were the natural voices of a resting place, the soft murmurs of wood in winter. Beyond the stalls, in a small corner near the western wall, stood the livestock pen. Empty now, its gates locked for the night. The pen still carried the scent of hay buried beneath snow, and the lingering warmth where animals had been tied during the day. In spring, this area would be crowded with goats, sheep, chickens, and the occasional stubborn cow. But winter simplified everything, reducing the noise to silence, the movement to stillness. Just past the livestock pen lay a row of stone markers, ancient posts set generations ago to divide trade zones. Their surfaces were rough, covered in thin sheets of ice, and each bore carvings of symbols long out of fashion. Some showed spirals. Others depicted arrows or simple geometric shapes. Under snow, they appeared soft and gentle, as though age and winter together had smoothed their long memory of crowds. A pair of watchmen entered the square from the eastern path. Their lanterns swayed as they walked, scattering dim gold across the snow. They paused, scanning the area, not because they expected danger, but because the square was too important to leave unobserved. It was the city's stomach, its heartbeat during daylight. It needed watching even as it slept. The older watchman lifted his lantern, inspecting the stalls. The younger one brushed snow from a bench with a gloved hand, checking for signs of recent disturbance. Finding none, they exchanged quiet nods. Their breath drifted upward in small clouds. They continued their patrol, leaving a trail of crisp footprints that the snow would soon erase. As the night deepened, the silence grew more absolute. Snowflakes fell more slowly, drifting as if carried by invisible hands. The market square seemed to listen to the wind brushing the rooftops, to the distant creak of the Kremlin walls, to the soft hum of the frozen river. It absorbed these sounds, held them, and let them settle into the wooden beams and pathways. This was the market's truest form, not the crowded, noisy maze of day, but this quiet resting place preserved beneath winter's soft blanket. Here, in silence, one could feel the weight of centuries. The footsteps of merchants long gone, the echoes of bargains struck, the memory of children running between stalls, the smell of summer berries, of autumn harvest, of springtime herbs. The sleeping market square, covered in moonlit snow, was more than empty space. It was a vessel of memory, waiting patiently for morning. The wooden homes of medieval Moscow stood huddled together like a small village within the greater city, shoulder to shoulder, roof to roof, bound by snow, frost, and centuries of shared winters. From afar, they appeared as a cluster of gently sloped silhouettes dusted in white, each roof carrying a thick blanket of snow that softened every line and curve. In this still winter night, the homes did not seem built by hands, but rather grown from the frozen earth itself, shaped by the rhythm of long, northern seasons. Snow drifted steadily over the rooftops, settling into deep folds along the eaves. Wooden shingles darkened by smoke, rain, and age peeked out beneath that blanket, but only faintly. The snow smoothed them, muting their edges until each roof looked like a gentle hill. Icicles hung down in elegant rows, long and clear, catching the faint glow from distant lanterns. They shimmered like fragile glass, daggers dangerous in shape, yet peaceful in their stillness. The homes were built from thick logs, their surfaces rough and uneven, each bearing the marks of axes used decades earlier. The timbers interlocked at the corners in the old style, forming strong, simple joints that stood firm against the winter's bite. Resin had been used long ago to seal cracks, and though much of it had dulled, its scent remained faintly in the air pines, earthy and familiar. When the cold grew harsh, the logs contracted and gave soft creaks that echoed gently along the street. Tonight, those sounds were muted under the layers of snow that embraced each house like a warm quilt. Snow piled along windowsills, filling every small gap, softening every edge. Many of the windows were covered with thin sheets of oiled parchment rather than glass glowing faintly from within where firelight flickered behind them. These small patches of warmth, scattered across the neighborhood, looked like tiny amber stars embedded in a world of pale white. The paths between the houses were narrow, shaped more by habit than design. In summer, they were worn dirt. In winter, they became soft trenches of snow, edged by wooden fences. The fences themselves leaned slightly under winter's weight, their slats coated in thick frost. Between them lay footprints left earlier in the evening. The heavy steps of a man returning home with firewood, the lighter trail of a child carrying a bucket from the well, the delicate prints of a cat walking alone through the snow. Now, as night deepened, those footprints grew less distinct. Fresh snow drifted down, filling them gently. By morning, they would fade entirely, erased by winter's patient hand. Inside the homes, warmth glowed from the heart of each dwelling, the great masonry stove. No matter how small or humble the house, the stove was its center, its protector, its provider. Thick brick walls held heat long into the night, radiating slow, comforting warmth that seeped into every beam and every blanket. Families gathered around it, not only to cook or sleep nearby, but to share the quiet companionship winter encouraged. One home, near the bend of a narrow street, stood slightly larger than the rest. Its roof bore deeper snow, its walls scratch-marked by tools once used to carve beams. The windows glowed a soft gold. Outside, smoke curled up through a chimney capped with a small wooden hood to keep snow from falling in. The smell drifting from that smoke pine wood mixed with dried birch was warm and clean, faintly sweet. Within, the family rested. A father, broad-shouldered and weary from a day of hauling wood, sat leaning against the stove's curve, drifting into sleep. A mother, wrapped in a wool shawl, had finished mending a coat before placing it near the stove to dry. Two children lay curled on a platform built above the stove, where warmth collected most strongly. Their breath rose in small clouds at first, until the heat dissolved it. They slept deeply, unaware of the vast cold pressing against the walls outside. On the floor near the door lay a fur-lined cloak dusted with snow. Someone had returned home late perhaps, after visiting neighbors or running a final errand in the market. The cloak lay where it had been shed, its edges stiff with frost. Nearby, a wooden bucket sat half full of melting snow, gathered recently to refill the family's water pot. The slow drip of melting ice created a gentle rhythm inside the otherwise still room. Across the street, another home stood low and narrow, snow piled nearly to the lower edge of its windows. A lantern hung from a wooden peg beside the door, its flame nearly extinguished, casting only the faintest ring of dim gold upon the snow below. Inside, an elderly couple rested. They had lived through many winters together, and their home bore signs of long hands at work. Patched beams, reinforced shutters, old tools stored neatly by the door. The stove in their home glowed softly, giving warmth without wasting wooden art they had mastered after a lifetime of cold seasons. Their shelves held clay, jars filled with dried berries, herbs, and salt. A wooden box beneath the table stored small treasures gathered over decades embroidered cloth. Old coins, a carved bird whose paint had long faded. Their world was small, but rich with memory. The winter night held no fear for them. It was an old companion. Farther down the street, a modest home had left a candle burning near the window, its flame swaying slightly whenever the wind slipped through a crack. Inside, a young woman hummed a quiet tune while spinning flax into thread. Her fingers moved slowly, rhythmically. She worked not from necessity alone, but from habit, a kind of simple, patient work that soothed the mind during long winter nights. Outside her home, the snow-covered path glowed faintly beneath the candlelight. A small wooden sled leaned against the wall, its runners buried in snow. Beside it, a stack of chopped wood stood neatly tied in bundles. The woman had split some of it herself earlier that day, her gloves still frozen stiff where she had left them by the door. Every home in this district, from the humblest hut to the sturdiest tradesman's dwelling, breathed with quiet warmth beneath the snow. Winter pressed hard against the walls, but inside, life persisted with calm endurance. Curtains swayed gently near windows. The crackling of stoves whispered through the beams. A dog barked in its sleep beside a hearth. A baby stirred briefly, then settled. Firelight trembled across wooden walls, warming them with amber glow. Outside, the wind moved softly, brushing snow from eaves, carrying faint scents of smoke and pine. The wooden homes stood firm, simple, strong, and peaceful in their patient rest. They were more than shelters. They were the heartbeats of the winter city, each one, a warm core glowing gently within the cold. Each one a world of stories, breathing quietly through the night. Within the snow-laden streets of medieval Moscow, the simplest wooden homes held the warmest worlds. From the outside, these dwellings looked modest low roofs heavy with snow, narrow windows covered in oiled parchment, chimneys exhaling slow trails of smoke into the night. But inside, where firelight touched every beam and shadow lingered softly against the walls, the heart of peasant life pulsed in gentle, steady rhythm. A peasant home was built as much for survival as for comfort. Its walls, made from thick pine logs, fitted tightly with mossback seams, held back the worst of the cold. The scent of dried moss mixed with the sweet, earthy smell of timber and the faint aroma of wood smoke that drifted from every corner. In winter, the home felt like a sturdy wooden nest, simple, warm, protective. At the center of nearly every peasant home stood the great stove, the very soul of the dwelling. It dominated one side of the room, a massive block of brick and clay, shaped carefully by skilled hands. Its curved back and broad top served as both bed and bench, its firebox glowing softly behind a thick iron door. The warmth that radiated from it spread slowly but powerfully, reaching the farthest corners of the house and threading through blankets, clothing, and wooden beams. On this deep winter night, the stove's warmth filled the peasant home with a comforting glow. The fire inside had been fed earlier with birch logs split precisely to burn long and steady. Now they glowed red, their embers pulsing like the steady heartbeat of the house. Every crackle was soft and deliberate, a whispered reminder that the home was alive and awake, even as the world outside slept beneath snow and silence. A family gathered near the stove, quiet, tired, but content in the familiar closeness of winter evenings. The father sat on a low wooden stool, his broad shoulders wrapped in a patched wool coat. He had spent the day hauling water from the well, tending the small livestock shed, and chopping wood until his hands were numb. Now, with his boots lined up near the door to dry and his gloves laid beside them, he rested with a cup of warm broth in hand. His breath no longer fogged the air. The stove's heat had chased away the bite of the night. The mother moved quietly across the room, her footsteps soft against the wooden floor. She carried a woven basket filled with dried herbs, mint, yarrow, chamomile harvested in summer and strung above the stove until crisp. She reached into a small clay pot, sprinkling a pinch of herbs into a simmering kettle set on the stove's edge. The gentle aroma of mint and chamomile drifted into the room, mingling with the wood smoke and settling in the rafters like a peaceful lullaby. Two children shared the raised platform above the stove, a wide, warm space where most peasant families slept during the coldest months. They lay curled beneath wool blankets, their cheeks flushed from heat, their small breaths steady and deep. One clutched a wooden toy carved by their father, a horse, its body simple but lovingly shaped. The other child held a small cloth doll made from scraps of linen. Though their toys were humble, each bore the marks of affection and care. A cat, small and gray, had found its place near the stove's base. It stretched lazily, then settled again with a soft purr. Its fur glistened faintly in the firelight. Cats were treasured in peasant homes not only for their warmth and companionship, but for their duty in keeping mice from stored grains and winter supplies. This one seemed especially proud of its role, sleeping with one paw draped across its nose. The household tools rested neatly around the room. A wooden ladle hung from a peg beside bundles of dried onions and garlic. A simple iron pot stood near the hearth. A broom made from tightly bound branches leaned against the wall. In one corner, baskets held winter vegetables, cabbage, turnips, and bits, while a small sack of barley lay tied tightly to keep out mice. Everything had its place, not through luxury, but necessity. From the ceiling beams hung strips of smoked fish, their skins glistening faintly in the firelight. Next to them were herbs tied in bunches, sage, thyme, chervil gathered from the forest and meadows months earlier. These stores, carefully prepared, were the family's winter lifeline, ensuring meals during the long months when the earth slept beneath ice. A wooden table stood in the center of the room, its surface smooth from years of use. Upon it rested a loaf of dark rye bread, wrapped in a linen cloth to keep it soft, and a small knife used for slicing. Bread was the staple of peasant life, baked once or twice a week and cherished with every meal. Tonight, only a few slices remained from the loaf, but another batch of dough waited in a clay bowl near the stove, rising slowly in the warmth. The walls were bare save for a few treasured belongings. A carved wooden icon of a saint hung near the door, its surface worn from years of gentle touches. It watched over the family with silent guardianship. Beside it hung a small bundle of dried flowers, a summer memory preserved against the winter's long chill. The night outside was cold enough to stiffen the wooden planks of the door. Frost gathered around its edges, forming thin white lines like delicate lace. But inside, the air felt thick, warm, and alive. The shadows created by the fire danced slowly along the beams and walls, moving with quiet grace. Each flicker brought comfort rather than fear. The home, though humble, felt protected. The mother scooped hot broth from the kettle and poured it into small wooden cups, handing one to the father and setting another near the children's platform. The steam rose into the air, scented with herbs and vegetables. She sat beside her husband, wrapping her shawl more tightly around her shoulders. Together, they watched the embers glow, listening to the gentle sounds of their sleeping children. The wind brushed softly against the walls, but it posed no threat. The home had stood through many winters. It would stand through this one too. Inside these wooden walls, life unfolded in quiet endurance. No luxury, no abundance. Only warmth, family, and the simple rhythm of winter survival. Yet in this simplicity lay a deep richness, a sense of belonging, of shared nights, of whispered stories told near the stove. The peasant home, glowing softly beneath its snow-covered roof, held a world of warmth in the midst of winter's stillness. In a quieter quarter of Moscow, away from the narrow streets and clustered peasant homes, stood a slightly larger house, its walls dark with the age of timber, its roof bowed gently beneath the weight of winter snow. This was the home of a merchant, a man who had seen both the rise and fall of fortunes in this bustling northern city. The house exuded a quiet dignity, a careful attention to practicality and comfort, yet it also carried hints of quiet, luxury marks of a life that could afford a little more warmth and security in the harsh months of winter. The first signs of life within the household came from the storerooms. Barrels of salted fish, sacks of grain, and dried fruits lined the walls. The smells, rich and layered, carried faintly through the narrow corridors. Wooden chests, bound in iron and worn smooth by careful hands, held bolts of imported cloth, the vibrant colors muted beneath the soft lamplight. These goods were not just possessions, but symbols of survival and status, tokens of trade that reached from distant lands to this northern city. Their presence spoke quietly of the merchant's careful planning, his vigilance in preparing for the long, unforgiving winter. Within the main room, the heart of the home, the family had begun their evening routines. A low, broad stove dominated one corner, its fire glowing steadily, casting dancing shadows on the walls adorned with icons, small windows filtering the pale winter light into gentle squares of gold and red. The mother of the household moved quietly, arranging furs on benches, preparing a simple stew that simmered slowly, the aroma mingling with the scent of timber and candle wax. Children, their cheeks flushed from brief play outside, gathered near the stove, listening in quiet awe to stories of distant lands, tales brought home by their father's trade, or whispered legends from the surrounding forests. The merchant himself occupied a smaller chamber at the rear of the house, a narrow table before him illuminated by the flickering flame of a single candle. He bent over his ledger, quill moving slowly, deliberately, tracing accounts with care and precision. Each mark, each calculation, represented months of effort, the painstaking work of trade, barter, and negotiation. The candlelight trembled across the page, making the ink appear to shift and breathe. Yet the merchant's hand remained steady, unhurried. Outside, the snow pressed against the wooden walls, muffling the sounds of the city. But within, the world was alive with thought and meticulous attention. The quiet of the home was punctuated only by the soft noises of domestic life, the distant creak of floorboards, the whisper of furs brushing against benches, the occasional clink of a spoon against a ceramic bowl. In this, there was a rhythm, a gentle ebb and flow that carried the household through the evening. Even the children's laughter was subdued, softened by the warmth of the stove and the comfort of familiar walls. Life in this home, though richer than the peasant cottages nearby, shared the same fundamental heartbeat: survival, warmth, and the measured joys of companionship. As the hours advanced, the merchant finished his records and leaned back, exhaling slowly. The candle's flame flickered, casting long shadows that danced across the walls adorned with icons. Each image told a story. Saints and angels gazing benevolently, guardians of hearth and home. Their presence was a quiet reminder that, even in the pursuit of wealth and comfort, faith remained central. The merchant carefully extinguished the candle, leaving the room in a soft, subtle hush. Outside, the wind sighed against the shutters, carrying with it the gentle patter of snow. Yet inside, the household embraced the serenity of the night. The family gathered for the evening meal, simple yet hearty, shared beneath the protective gaze of the icons. Conversations were soft, a gentle exchange of news, observations, and plans for the morrow. The merchant's children spoke of school lessons, of learning to count and read, of understanding the distant lands from which their father's goods had come. The mother reminded them of the importance of patience and careful tending, of the ways that winter demanded respect and preparation. These moments, though ordinary, held a sacredness of their own, a rhythm that connected generations in the quiet endurance of daily life. After the meal, the family prepared for rest. Furs were arranged carefully upon benches and simple beds, small lanterns dimmed and set aside. The winter night pressed close against the windows, yet the warmth of fire, The sturdiness of timber walls and the steady vigilance of the merchants' planning created a sanctuary from the frozen world outside. Even the household's animal cats curled atop benches. A dog nestled near the door contributed to the sense of quiet, domestic tranquility, their presence a soft, living accompaniment to the stillness. The snow continued its slow descent beyond the sturdy walls, each flake a whispered promise that Moscow's city and its people would endure. In the distance, the faint glow of lanterns marked the sleeping streets, the silent watch of the Kremlin and guards, ensuring that this quiet moment of domestic comfort was protected. Within the merchant's home, time seemed to stretch, slowed by candlelight, softened by warmth, and cushioned by the ever-present hush of falling snow. It was a night of preparation and repose, a time when wealth, faith, and careful planning combined to create a sanctuary from the unyielding frost. And as the household settled fully, the merchant allowed himself a final look toward the window. Beyond, the city rested under the gentle weight of winter, rooftops and streets softened by snow, chimneys sending faint smoke into the still air. The river gleamed pale and frozen, and the forests beyond waited patiently beneath their heavy white covers. Moscow, in every corner from the smallest peasant home to the merchant, Esmor, substantial dwelling breathed in unison with the winter night, each household a note in the enduring song of life and survival. Thus, in this quiet merchant home, comfort and diligence intertwined. Each flicker of candlelight, each shadow cast by timber walls, each warm breath of family near the stove spoke of resilience, of continuity, and of the subtle luxury of being sheltered from the storm. The city, vast and enduring, rested gently in the snow, and here, in the heart of domestic life, one could sense the quiet, steadfast rhythm that would carry Moscow through the deepest of winter nights. Beyond the quiet streets of homes and marketplaces, the path led toward the churches of Moscow, their domes rising gently above the snow-draped rooftops, like silent guardians of faith. Even in the dead of winter, the city's churches carried a solemn presence, a quiet strength in the midst of cold and silence. Snow rested lightly on the curved shingles of the domes, glittering faintly in the soft light of a pale moon, while small, narrow windows offered a muted glow from within, flickering as candle flames danced behind painted glass. The walk along the cobblestone paths, softened by layers of snow, was hushed, each footfall muffled in the white blanket that stretched across the city. The air carried the faint scent of incense and smoke from torches burning near the entrances, a quiet mingling of the sacred and the domestic. Here one could feel the heartbeat of Moscow in a different way, not through the bustle of trade or the clamor of market life, but through the enduring presence of faith, the steady rhythm of prayers whispered by those seeking solace in winter's deep silence. The churches themselves were simple in their early wooden forms, sturdy and practical, yet marked with devotion. Wooden crosses atop each dome, weathered by time, reached toward the sky, as if seeking warmth from the distant sun. Inside, faint candlelight glimmered across painted icons and gilded images, revealing saints and angels in delicate, solemn poses. Each figure seemed to watch over the streets, homes, and people below, silent witnesses to the quiet endurance of life under snow and frost. Though the city slept, a few devoted souls moved along the church paths, monks and priests tending to their evening rituals, elderly women crossing themselves softly as they left a small votive candle burning in the cold night air, their breath forming fleeting clouds as they whispered prayers for health, prosperity, and protection. Their presence was gentle yet profound, a reminder that even in the harshest winters, faith provided comfort, continuity, and hope. Each person, in their own quiet devotion, became a thread in the tapestry of Moscow's enduring spirit. Outside, the snow deepened, thickening along the edges of the streets and piling against wooden fences. Icicles hung from roof edges, delicate yet firm, catching the faint starlight and refracting it into shards of silver. A few birds, hardy against the frost, perched in the bare branches of trees near the churches, their small movements barely disturbing the serene hush of the city. The wind, though sharp, carried only whispers here, folding the sounds of the streets into silence, allowing the quiet presence of the churches to dominate the night. Passing from one church to the next, the traveler could feel the city's pulse slow. The bells, though silent for the hour, left an echo in memory, as if their absence itself held a sacred weight. The paths between the domes and towers led through courtyards dusted in snow, benches empty, gates closed, and candles faintly illuminating small icons hung near doorways. It was a world of patience, a world attuned to rhythm and reflection, where every shadow, every glimmer of light, and every whisper of wind became part of the meditation of winter night. The churches were not merely places of worship. They were markers of time and endurance. Families could look toward their wooden spires and be reminded of the continuity of life, that even as snow-covered streets and frost-stiffened limbs, warmth and human spirit persisted. In the distance, the frozen Moskva River glimmered faintly, mirroring the gentle glow from the domes, connecting sacred spaces to the pulse of the living city. Faith, like the snow, covered every surface, softening harsh edges, bringing a quiet order to the frozen world. On this walk, one could imagine the prayers spoken in past winters, hopes for safe travels, for abundant harvests, for protection from disease and fire, whispered under the heavy snow and carried by wind through the city. Each church, with its gentle glow and solemn structure, held centuries of devotion, quiet but resilient, teaching patience and endurance. Even the smallest candle burning behind frosted glass seemed to hold a universe of warmth, a fragile beacon against the vast, silent night. As the path wound past the last church of this sector, the cityscape unfolded behind the domes, rooftops laden with snow, streets dimly lit by lanterns, chimneys releasing faint columns of smoke into the frigid air. The churches, like sentinels, kept watch over all of it, their presence enduring even as darkness deepened. In these moments, the walk was not merely movement through space, but a journey through time, through the centuries of devotion that had shaped Moscow's soul, and through the quiet heartbeat of the city itself. And so, the walk past the churches concluded, leaving a lasting impression of reverence and stillness. In the hush of winter night, among snow-laden domes and flickering candlelight, the city rested with the comforting presence of faith, a gentle reminder that warmth, hope, and resilience could exist even in the coldest, quietest hours. Moscow, beneath the quiet weight of snow, held both life and prayer in perfect harmony. And as one continued toward the sleeping streets beyond, the memory of the sacred glow lingered, a soft echo in the vast stillness of winter night. Beyond the quiet streets and the solemn glow of church domes, the city of Moscow stretched toward the Moskva River, now transformed by winter into a solid sheet of ice. The water that once carried boats, traders, and the occasional traveler now lay frozen, silent and unyielding, reflecting the pale glow of the moon and the flickering lights of nearby houses. Its surface, smooth and glassy, captured the subtle motion of the night, the drifting snowflakes, the faint sweep of wind, and the occasional shadow of a bird passing over in search of food. Along the river banks, the signs of human life were still present. Fishermen, who had spent long days casting nets and mending lines in warmer months, had stored their tools carefully, neatly arranging nets and hooks in small wooden sheds now dusted with snow. Some had ventured briefly onto the ice, testing its strength, leaving delicate tracks that were quickly covered by the soft descent of snow. These paths, temporary and fragile, marked the rhythm of life adjusting to winter's dominance, a testament to the city's resilience and intimate knowledge of the land. The frozen river was more than a pathway or a barrier, was a mirror of the season itself. Ice formed in delicate, interlacing patterns, resembling the intricate lace of frost that decorated window panes. Cracks and ridges appeared here and there, subtle reminders of the river's hidden currents beneath the solid surface. A traveler walking along its edge could sense the restless pulse of water trapped beneath winter's firm grip, a quiet energy that mirrored the still yet vibrant life of Moscow beyond the banks. Small fires burned near wooden docks and river sheds, their smoke curling in thin spirals toward the sky. These lights offered guidance and reassurance, marking where passage was safe and where it was wise to remain on solid ground. The smell of burning pine mingled with the crisp, sharp scent of ice and snow, a fragrance both invigorating and soothing. A few hardy souls, tending to necessary tasks, even in the cold, moved with careful deliberation, their breath forming fleeting clouds in the frigid air. Every movement felt measured, mindful, a dance between survival and respect for the frozen world. Across the ice, the faint sound of snow shifting under weight echoed softly, muted by the expanse of frozen water. Occasionally, the distant bark of a dog or the rattle of a loose shutter from a nearby home punctuated the quiet. The Moskva River, while solid and seemingly motionless, held a presence of its own, commanding attention, reminding those who approached it that nature's power remained in full force, even when hidden beneath layers of frost. Winter pathways, carefully trodden by merchants, guards, and villagers, crisscrossed the frozen surface. Some paths led directly to distant quarters of the city, shortening travel when streets were clogged with deep snow. Others meandered toward the forests beyond, temporary trails connecting human life to the wild expanse surrounding Moscow. Travelers moved cautiously, aware of the ice's subtle shifts, respecting the fragile barrier between safety and potential danger. Even in Mothyon, the frozen river demanded mindfulness, patience, and quiet reverence. The reflections on the ice were remarkable in their stillness. Wooden houses, with their warm, flickering windows, mirrored themselves faintly, as if the city had been duplicated beneath the ice. Church domes, serene and solemn, shimmered with muted gold against the silver-blue sheen of frozen water. The snow-laden riverbanks framed the scene, trees bending under frost's weight, creating delicate archways through which the moonlight filtered. In this quiet spectacle, one could feel the interconnectedness of the city and nature, human life and the vast, enduring winter. In some corners along the river, animals ventured cautiously. A fox, its coat thickened for winter, moved silently near the forest edge, leaving small prints in the soft snow. Birds flitted between trees and rooftops, their movements brief yet precise, as if aware of the stillness that enveloped the city. Even the river itself seemed to breathe in subtle rhythms, expanding and contracting slightly with the ice, carrying the hidden flow of life beneath a frozen veneer. The river was also a place of memory and reflection. Each winter, families and travelers remembered the activity of warmer Moskva, trade along its banks, the laughter of children sliding into its gentle currents, the occasional skirmish of waterfowl disturbing its surface. Now, in its frozen state, it offered stillness and contemplation. Walking along the ice, one could sense centuries of life along the Moskva, each layer of snow and frost adding to the story of this city enduring beneath the northern sky. As the night deepened, the river became almost sacred in its stillness. The wind moved more gently here, carrying only whispers of distant life, muffled by the thickness of ice and snow. Lanterns glowed faintly along the banks, small beacons marking safe passage, their reflections stretching across the frozen expanse like fragile lines of gold. The city slept beyond the river, yet the Moskva itself seemed awake, alive in its silence, guarding the memory of the flowing water beneath and the life it sustained around it. By the time one turned from the riverbank to return to the sleeping streets, a sense of calm had settled deep within the soul. The frozen Moskva River was more than an obstacle or a feature of geography. It was a witness to the resilience of Moscow, a quiet companion to the enduring life of its people. The snow soft every sound, the ice reflected every light, and the hush of the night pressed gently against the city's heart. And so, beneath the pale moon and falling snow, the frozen Moskva River rested, a vast, silent testament to the northern winter, to human endurance, and to the patient rhythm of life in medieval Moscow. Its presence reminded all who passed of the beauty and fragility of winter, and of the quiet strength required to endure it, night after night, year after year. Beyond the frozen Moskva River, where the city's reach slowly yielded to the wild, the forests of northern Russia began, silent sentinels of winter. The edge of these woods marked the boundary between the ordered life of Moscow and the untamed rhythm of nature. Here, the snow lay heavier, piled in gentle drifts along pine boughs and tangled underbrush, muffling all sound, transforming the forest into a realm of hushed mystery. Even the wind moved differently here, weaving through trees, curling around trunks, and carrying with it the faint, sharp scent of frost and pine resin. The city and forest existed in a delicate balance. From the walls of Moscow, one could hear only faint echoes of the wild, distant wolves, the snap of a frozen branch, or the brief scuffle of animals moving beneath snow. Yet, To approach the forest was to enter a deeper silence, a stillness almost sacred in its depth. The snow softened each footfall, whether of man or beast, creating a landscape where even the smallest sound seemed magnified, carrying the weight of life and vigilance. Hunters' paths crisscrossed the outer edge, faint trails marked by broken twigs and flattened snow. These paths were rarely used now, as winter's grip limited both the prey and the hunter's patience. A few courageous hunters ventured out from the city with lanterns, their breath forming fleeting clouds in the icy air. They moved slowly, deliberately, aware that one misstep could mean plunging into hidden snowdrifts or disturbing the subtle balance of frozen wildlife. Each step was a dance with the forest, a silent negotiation with the unseen creatures who called these woods home. The wolves' howls occasionally pierced the still night, distant yet haunting, a reminder that the wilderness was ever vigilant. Their calls echoed off the snow and through the skeletal branches of trees, blending into the soft rhythm of falling snowflakes. Travelers paused to listen, heartbeats syncing with the wild cadence, understanding that this night belonged not only to the city, but to the forest, to the creatures that endured alongside humans, all waiting patiently beneath winter's heavy mantle. Snow-laden branches formed delicate archways overhead, shaping the light from the moon into shifting patterns on the untouched ground. Each tree seemed ancient, bearing the weight of centuries, of seasons weathered and winters endured. The forest's presence was both comforting and solemn, a reminder that beyond the city's wooden walls, life persisted with its own quiet resilience, teaching patience, caution, and respect for the rhythms of nature. Occasionally, the glint of animal eyes reflected in the pale light, fleeting glimpses of foxes or hares, cautious in the deep night. Their movement was purposeful, guided by hunger and survival, yet careful to respect the deep silence. Even birds, hardy against winter, remained hidden, perching motionless on branches, conserving warmth against the frozen night. Every living creature here had adapted to the severe conditions, demonstrating a quiet endurance that mirrored that of Moscow's citizens within the warmth of their homes. The forest edge also marked the city's connection to the untamed beyond. Logs for winter fires, herbs for medicine, and small game were gathered with care, each excursion a reminder of dependence on the natural world. Even in the dead of winter, the forest offered sustenance, but only to those who approached with patience, knowledge, and respect. The thin smoke of small fires along hunters' paths sometimes rose, mingling with the night air, yet they remained fleeting and cautious, aware that the forest itself watched silently. The snow itself carried a particular music here, distinct from the streets or the frozen river. Each flake seemed amplified, whispering as it landed on branches, roofs, and frozen ground. Footsteps left impressions that were soon soft or erased by more falling snow, a gentle reminder of the transience of human presence amidst the vast permanence of nature. The hush of the forest became almost sacred, a lullaby composed by wind, ice, and trees, echoing the steady heartbeat of the northern winter. In this wild expanse, the city seemed distant, its walls softened by snow, the faint glow of lanterns barely reaching this quiet threshold. Here, life slowed even further, measured in snowflakes and distant sounds. The hunters, the occasional traveler, and the creatures of the forest shared the same space in silence, each moving with caution and respect, each aware that the night demanded patience, observation, and restraint. As the traveler or observer stood at the forest's edge, one could feel the mingling of two worlds. The human, structured and fortified within Moscow's walls, and the wild, enduring and patient beyond the timbered streets. Both existed in delicate balance, each shaped by winter's hand, each resilient in its own way. And beneath the soft blanket of snow, the rhythm of life continued quietly. Footsteps, heartbeats, whispers of wind, and the faint echo of distant wolf calls, all harmonizing with the slow, patient pulse of a winter night. Finally, when the path led back toward the city streets, the forest's silence lingered, wrapping around the mind like a cloak. The contrast between the wild night and the warmth of homes, the glowing candlelight within, and the muffled streets beyond reminded one of the resilience of life, the patience of winter, and the quiet endurance that bound the city and its surrounding forests together. Moskva rested beneath the snow, while the forest waited patiently, a silent partner in the eternal rhythm of northern winters. Leaving the forest's edge behind, the traveler returned slowly toward the heart of Moscow, where the streets slept beneath heavy snow. Each step was softened by the white blanket that stretched across the city, every sound muffled into a gentle whisper. Lanterns glimmered faintly through frost-covered windows, casting pools of amber light on rooftops and snowdrifts. The wooden walls of the city's homes groaned softly under the weight of frost and ice, a quiet symphony of endurance, creaking and settling as the night deepened. The air was crisp and still, carrying the faint aroma of wood smoke from chimneys, mingled with the scent of frozen earth. Snowflakes drifted silently from the sky, each one landing softly on a roof, a window pane, or the edge of a street. The city's fortifications loomed overhead, strong and dark against the pale glow of moonlight, their towers rising in quiet vigilance. The Kremlin, with its wooden gates and palisades, stood like a sentinel, guarding a sleeping populace, its timber creaking faintly as if breathing in the silence of winter night. Every street told a story. Roofs bent under the snow's weight, and wooden shutters, thick and protective, were closed against the cold. The traces of daytime life footprints, cart tracks, and the occasional sled mark had long since been softened by the steady descent of snow. The marketplace, once alive with traders and the clamor of barter, now lay in calm, the scent of stored grain and dried herbs lingering faintly in the air. Even the smallest details of daily life, the ropes tied around carts, the carefully stacked firewood, spoke of preparation, patience, and the rhythm of life, shaped by the long, harsh winters. Passing by the homes, the glow from windows offered glimpses of quiet domestic life. Inside, families huddled near stoves, wrapped in furs and woolen blankets. Children slept or listened to stories. Elders tended fires, and meals simmered gently over the hearth. The warmth inside contrasted with the frozen world outside, a reminder of the delicate balance between survival and comfort in a city built of wood and snow. Even in the grander merchant homes, candlelight glimmered softly, reflecting from icons on the walls, a gentle testament to faith, resilience, and continuity. As the traveler moved through the streets, the city felt almost alive in its slumber. Dogs curled near doorways, cats perched on benches or windowsills, and the faint sound of breath or movement carried through quiet corridors. Each step on the snow-laden streets produced a soft echo, a reminder of human presence and activity, even as the city rested beneath winter's hush. The wind, though sharp at times, moved with discretion, sweeping flakes along streets, but never disturbing the profound stillness of night. The wooden fortifications creaked with subtle regularity. Towers and walls expanded and contracted under the cold, their groans like the murmurs of the city itself. Guards patrolled slowly, lanterns in hand, moving along the ramparts with careful attention. Their eyes scanned the snowy expanse, observing rooftops, streets, and the distant river beyond. Even in the quietest hours, the city's vigilance persisted, a silent promise that Moscow's heart would endure, protected by those who watched, waited, and understood the rhythms of winter night. Snow reflected the faint light of the moon, turning streets into a pale, shimmering ribbon that guided the traveler back toward familiar quarters. Each house, with its smoke curling from chimneys and windows aglow with firelight, seemed to pulse with life, quiet, yet steady. The city, though frozen and softened by snow, breathed gently, a rhythm in harmony with the cold expanse that surrounded it. Life continued, even in stillness, and the steady heartbeat of Moscow could be felt in every street, every home, every subtle groan of timber under frost. At the edge of the market square, the silence was almost sacred. Once bustling with traders and carts, it now lay dormant, each stall secured and covered, the scent of stored goods faintly drifting through the crisp air. Footsteps crunched softly on the snow, echoing through empty lanes, reminding the traveler of the daily pulse that would resume with sunrise. For now, the city rested fully, wrapped in its blanket of snow, every detail soft and muted, every movement deliberate and careful. Returning toward smaller residential streets, the city felt intimate and protective. Narrow lanes twisted between wooden homes, each with a small garden or yard hidden beneath snow. Smoke curled gently from chimneys, joining the quiet of the wind to create a delicate symphony. Even the smallest details, a lantern swinging slightly on its hook, a snow-laden branch brushing a roof, became part of the subtle rhythm of night. Moscow in winter was not loud. It was steady, resilient, and profoundly serene. And as the traveler completed the circuit, returning toward the heart of the city, the hush of winter wrapped everything in a gentle embrace. The snow softened every step, the wind whispered through the timbers, and the city, vast and enduring, groaned and settled under the frost. Every light in every window, every shadow cast on walls and rooftops, and every faint trace in the snow spoke of life persevering beneath winter's quiet weight. Moscow, in its deepest slumber, was alive with patience, endurance, and the timeless rhythm of human and natural harmony. In these quiet streets, under the soft veil of falling snow, the city revealed its heart. A pulse of warmth, vigilance, and gentle life, resilient and steady. The winter night, though long and cold, was softened by human presence, by the steady light of homes, and by the knowledge that each day, each season, and each snowfall was a part of the enduring story of medieval Moscow. At the very deepest hour of the night, when the moon hung low and silver over Moscow, the city seemed to exhale slowly, sinking fully into winter's embrace. Every street, every roof, and every wooden wall was softened by the snow, muffling the faintest sound, transforming the city into a vast, silent cathedral of frost. The stillness was profound, yet alive, a quiet pulse beneath the ice and timber, beneath the chimneys that sent thin spirals of smoke into the night air. Here, in this hour, the soul of Moscow revealed itself, timeless, patient, and enduring. The city's rooftops glimmered faintly under moonlight, each one carrying the weight of snow and the stories of those who slept within. Smoke rose gently from chimneys, curling into the frozen sky like whispered prayers. Even the creaking of wooden beams and the settling of fortified walls seemed hushed, subdued by the blanket of night. Every detail, from the smallest shutter to the tallest watchtower, contributed to the rhythm of the city's heartbeat. Slow and steady, measured in moments of endurance and quiet vigilance, the streets were deserted now, save for the occasional passing figure. A guard patrolling a quiet lane, a cat moving cautiously along a fence, or a distant traveler returning from the outer edges. Each step upon snow-laden ground was gentle, deliberate, as though the city itself demanded respect in this sacred hour. Lanterns flickered faintly, their glow casting long, wavering shadows that mingled with the soft reflection of moonlight. On the rooftops and frozen paths, the city was alive in subtlety, its pulse carried in the quiet and careful movements of those awake within its frozen embrace. The Kremlin loomed in silent vigilance, a wooden heart at the center of Moscow. Its towers and gates, dark against the night sky, bore the accumulated weight of snow and time. Guards huddled by small fires along the ramparts, watching, listening, their breath forming fleeting clouds in the icy air. Within these walls, the city's protection was constant, a promise etched in timber, iron, and vigilance. Outside, the snow reflected the moonlight, stretching endlessly across streets, rooftops, and the frozen Moskva River, reinforcing the serene rhythm of the city's rest. Even the churches, now distant but still visible, added to the sense of sacred stillness. Their domes glimmered pale under moonlight, small windows glowing faintly with candlelight. The quiet of faith and devotion mingled with the hush of snow, creating a sanctuary within a city already wrapped in winter's protective arms. Bells, silent for the night, seemed to linger in memory, their imagined echoes woven into the hush of streets and rooftops. Here, time slowed, allowing the rhythm of human life to harmonize with the cycles of nature and the passage of winter. The frozen Moskva River reflected the city in perfect calm, its solid surface a mere 2 rooftops, chimneys, and distant forests. Snow drifted across the ice in delicate patterns, softened by the night wind. The river, though lifeless in its frozen stillness, carried the memory of summer currents, the distant laughter of children, and the quiet passage of traders who once navigated its waters. In the heart of night, the river became a symbol of the enduring connection between life, city, and nature. Each frozen flake a testament to patience and resilience. The outer forests whispered faintly, their presence felt even within the city. Wolf howls carried on the wind, distant and haunting, a reminder that Moscow existed in harmony with the wild. That survival was a delicate balance between human ingenuity and nature's rhythm. Snow-laden branches cast shadows across frozen lanes, their movements subtle yet perceptible, emphasizing the quiet vigilance of the night. Even in deepest winter, life persisted measured, deliberate, and harmonized with the slow pulse of snow, ice, and timber. Within the city, homes glowed faintly, warm hearths sending light and life into the cold night. Families rested near fires, their breath mingling with the gentle smoke rising from chimneys. Children slept, elders reflected, and merchants recorded the day's accounts before candlelight was extinguished. The city's rhythm was quiet but steady, a testament to the endurance of human life, structured and softened by winter's embrace. Every detail, from a candle's flicker to the faint crunch of footsteps on snow, became part of the living harmony of Moscow at its deepest hour. And as the night continued, the city seemed to pause entirely. Snow fell in gentle waves, muffling distant sounds, softening edges, and weaving an invisible blanket over rooftops, streets, and frozen rivers. The world outside the walls was vast and cold, yet within the city, warmth, life, and resilience endured. Moscow's heartbeat, the quiet rhythm of fire, timber, snow, and human vigilance remained steady, enduring the frozen silence with patience and dignity. In the heart of the night, the soul of the city was revealed, not in noise or movement, but in stillness. The groaning of wooden walls, the glow of candlelight, the curl of smoke from chimneys, the reflection of moonlight on frozen surfaces, and the soft whisper of snow through trees. It was here that Moscow's enduring spirit, built from centuries of resilience, faith, and human care, could be felt most profoundly. A city alive in its quiet, wintered soul, patiently awaiting the dawn. And so, beneath the silver glow of moon and the gentle descent of snow, Moscow rested completely, its streets, rooftops, and walls softened by frost. The winter night held all in its hush. City and forest, river and home, human life, and the quiet pulse of nature. In this deepest moment, the heart of the night beat slowly, steadily, and timelessly, an eternal rhythm of endurance, warmth, and serene reflection in the snowbound city of medieval Moscow. And so, dear viewers and listeners, our journey through a still winter night in medieval Moscow comes to a close. The city rests beneath a blanket of snow, its wooden homes and fortified walls softened by frost, the quiet glow of candlelight reflecting on frozen streets and rooftops. The Moskva River lies still, mirroring the pale moonlight, while the forests beyond wait patiently in silence, as they have for countless winters. In this city of endurance and quiet rhythm we have seen the gentle warmth of stoves within humble cottages, the careful vigilance of merchants tending their accounts, and the sacred presence of churches casting their serene light across the snow. Each moment, each hushed sound, has woven together the heartbeat of medieval Moscow, a city alive, not in noise, but in stillness, patience, and quiet life. Now, as the story draws to its gentle conclusion, take a deep breath. Let the images of softly falling snow, timbered streets, and candlelit homes settle in your mind. Feel the calm of the city's long winter night wash over you, slowing your thoughts, softening your world, and inviting peace. For our viewers seeking rest, study, or simply a moment of calm, we have prepared an hour of soothing, relaxing music to continue after the spoken story. Allow it to carry you further into serenity, to drift gently into sleep, or simply to linger in the quiet comfort of a snow-covered medieval city. Thank you for sharing this evening with us. We hope that Moscow's timeless winter spirit has brought a sense of calm to your own night, and that the warmth and stillness of this story remain with you. Rest now, and let the music guide you softly into the night. Welcome, dear viewers and listeners, and thank you for joining us once again on Go to Sleep Historian. Tonight, we invite you to step quietly into a world long past, to drift gently through a snow-covered medieval Moscow. Imagine the city blanketed in soft white, where every sound is soft by falling snow. Wooden fortifications settle under winter's weight, and smoke curls lazily from the chimneys of small, humble homes. This is a city of stillness, a city of endurance, and tonight, you will witness its quiet heartbeat. In Tea Story, you will walk along frozen streets, past wooden homes, market squares, and churches where candlelight flickers gently, and snow softens every step. You will observe life within peasant cottages, merchant homes, and even along the city walls, feeling the warmth of stoves, the glow of hearths, and the patience of those who have learned to endure long, cold nights. You will see the frozen Moskva river stretching silently, and the dark forests beyond, where distant wolf calls echo across the snow-laden land. As we guide you through each chapter of the night, we will not rush. Instead, let your mind wander through the stillness. Let the images of timber, frost, and candlelight fill your imagination, and allow the calm of medieval Moscow to wrap around you. Before we begin, a gentle reminder to our viewers. If you find comfort in our stories, please consider subscribing to our channel for more peaceful journeys through history. Like, share, and comment. If you feel inspired, it helps us continue to bring these quiet tales to life. And after the spoken story concludes, we will leave an hour of relaxing, soothing music playing softly, perfect for drifting into sleep, studying, or simply letting your mind rest in peace. Let the music carry you gently into the calm of your own winter night. Now, settle comfortably, breathe slowly, and allow the hush of medieval Moscow to envelop you. Tonight, we step together into a still winter night in medieval Moscow. This intro is immersive, sits smooth, and aligns perfectly with your go-to-sleep historian style. If you like, I can now create a matching detailed outro, which will smoothly close the story and transition into the relaxing music. The night had settled over medieval Moscow like a great, silent cloak, heavy, unmoving, woven from snow, frost. The quiet cell above the city. Its lights surrounded by a thin veil of clouds. What little glow reached the air, scattered across rooftops, ramparts, and chimneys. The load of Moscow seemed dusted in a soft, silver shimmer. It was a winter so complete that even time appeared reluctant to move. From a distance, Moscow stood as a cluster of faint lights, a kind of sight that would greet a weary traveler approaching along a road. Wooden homes nestled close together, their roofs steeped to shinter drift. Strands of smoke spiraled sky, that were too long, live with wide, veered only nature curled beneath. The frozen skyline took beauty. The old wood, still from the stone one day because its tower stood and pierced the frosty air. To the ankhs, wind had grown palisade around from tarpened logly together. Each log seemed softly, pretty distant in slowful rhythm. Merchant homes rested shoulder to shoulder, creaking rust against them. Many had shutters drawn tight, their windows covered with oiled parchment that glowed faintly when firelight flickered inside. The market district lay dark, but even there, a stray lantern might burn low, a merchant keeping careful watch over valuable goods, or a restless soul tending to a stubborn winter cough. Yet such small lights did not break the night. They only joined it, adding to the tapestry of dim warmth woven through snow and silence. The winter sky hung close, leaving only a modest stretch of stars. They glittered faintly, as if reluctant to intrude upon the quiet below. A single breeze carried tiny flakes down in a slow, drifting dance. They touched rooftops without a sound, They caught in the fur-lined hats of night watchmen. They settled on the curved wooden eaves of homes built with patient hands. Each snowflake felt gentle, tame like a whisper reminding the stillness. In the fire quarters of Moscow, the Moskva River lay frozen in a long, unbroken ribbon of white. The moonlight brushed its surface until it gleamed like polished bone. The river, resting beneath its icy shell, offered no voice, not the rush of water, not the crackle of frost, not the groan of shifting ice. It was calm, entirely subdued, as if winter itself had commanded it to sleep. Fishermen's huts stood quiet nearby, their tools stacked, their little boats pulled ashore until warmer times returned. From the edges of the forest, beyond the city, faint shadows lingered, trees standing bare and brittle, their branches reaching skyward like ancient hands frozen in supplication. The woodland offered a soft rumble now and then, a fox stirring, an owl shifting unseen, or the distant sigh of wind weaving its way through pines. Though these sounds were modest, they only served to deepen the sense of peace. Moscow, in its winter stillness, was not cut off from the world around it, rather. It existed in harmony with the quiet expanse. Closer to the Kremlin walls, the narrow streets lay empty. Snow muffled every corner, smoothing paths, softening footprints, covering old wooden planks, and filling the small ruts made by carts earlier that day. No cries of traders, no wheels rolling, no horses clattering, just the hush of falling snow and the creak of roofs settling under its weight. Lantern posts stood motionless, their flames dulled by the thick, frost-tinted glass protecting them. The glow they cast was modest, enough for a night watchman to follow a path, but not so bright that the night lost its calm. Every sound was softened, every shape muted. Even the city's smell had changed, gone with a sense of livestock and market goods. In their place drifted the aroma of burning pine, warm bread baking slowly in hearth ovens, and the faint temps of cold iron from tools left outdoors. It was a scent that belonged only to winter, clean, crisp, and simple. As the night deepened, the weight of snow increased. It collected upon the beams of the Kremlin towers, settling into soft, rounded mounds. It dusted the sides of homes, clinging to rough wooden walls. It drifted over fences, forming gentle curves. Sometimes a patch of snow would slip free from a slanted roof with a muffled sigh, falling into a growing pile below. Yet even this sound did not break the peace. Instead, it became part of the rhythm, a quiet reminder that the city lived beneath the frost. The skyline held stories of past sieges, of long winters endured, of families that had warmed themselves behind thick wooden walls, of craftsmen shaping tools and icons by candlelight, of hunters returning from the forests with furs to trade. Each tower, each wall, each home held memory, and winter, being a slow and patient season, allowed these memories to rest without hurry. As snow continued drifting down, Moscow seemed suspended between earth and sky, caught in a dreamlike stillness. If one stood upon a high rampart and gazed outward, the whole city would appear like a sleeping village of light and shadow, protected by winter's embrace. Nothing hurried, nothing rushed. All was balanced, calm, and enduring. It was in this deep, timeless hush that the true character of medieval Moscow revealed itself.